Meeting for the 6th of March 2025. Just remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and will be played on Facebook. Could we all stand for open karakia, please? Te tawa mai runga, te tawa mai raro, te tawa mai roto, te tawa mai waho. Kia taua mai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haunea, huie, paekia. Thank you. I've apologies from Mayor Wise, Councillor Mawson and Councillor Tariha. The rest of us are here. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Brown, second Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest? No. No public forum. Announcements by the acting mayor.
No announcements, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have no announcements, but is there any notification of any minor matters, please? No. Announcements by management?
No.
Confirmation of minutes for Thursday, 24th of October, 2024. It's moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, we move on to item 1, lease of reserve variation for Napier City Rovers. Brian.
Good afternoon. So this item seeks approval from Council pursuant to the Reserves Act to vary the lease for Napier City Rovers, to extend the land area subject to their lease to accommodate a proposed extension for changing rooms, bathrooms and storage. Management has no concerns with this. They've obviously got to get their building consents and the resource consent or whatever's required. And I'll just note that the proposed extension doesn't impact the playing area or any public area. So happy to answer any questions.
Is there any? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed extension is still within the parcel of land that they've always occupied.
Through the chair, their current lease is simply for the footprint of their building and grandstand. The actual, I think we still call it the Blue Water Stadium, the hedged area, that is Napier City Council. So that is controlled by Napier City Council, and Napier City Rovers book that on an annual through our sports grounds booking system. So yes, it is still within that hedged area, and it's just an extension to their current footprint of their lease.
To that. So there won't be any greater or lesser cost of the use of the ground? The
playing field?
Playing field?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
There's no financial impact?
No. And obviously City Rovers meet the cost of their building and what have you. Yeah, and their ground lease will be adjusted for the larger footprint.
Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, and it's just a little bit unclear to me, and I may have missed it. Vehicle access into the field, will that be allowed for? Because I think that things start to spread as far as being able to get emergency vehicles in there and even our maintenance side of things.
So that was one of the issues that I raised early on when they brought their plans through. In the plan, the aerial, it shows that there is already an existing access point. It's just to the south of the building. So they originally had that earmarked as an outdoor space they were going to occupy, but we've identified, well, we still need access through the park, and instead of creating a new one, let's just utilise what we have there. So we're working together with them. So yeah, you're right, it will be used for emergency services and our maintenance crew.
Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair, it's an extension of Councillor McGrath's question, because that was the question I was going to ask. But the area you're talking about, that access area, that's currently got a whole lot of furniture and stuff stacked on it, so the agreement would need to include that they keep that free?
That's correct, yes.
Councillor Crystal.
Just through the chair, so who owns the building currently? Do they own it? Or?
Yes, Napier City Rovers own the building and the grandstand in front, and that's their responsibility. Yep. And they simply lease the reserved land off us, the ground, yeah. The land, not the playing field.
Councillor Bowen.
Through you, Madam Mr Chair, sorry.
Master.
Will the lease be increased because of this extension, or does it stay the
The
same?
ground rent,
Well, whatever they pay us,
yes.
so it stays the same,
It'll be increased slightly to take into account the
ground they're using?
increased area they're occupying
Okay,
under this variation.
thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair. Just what's the approximate timeframe for completion of the project?
It all comes down to funding, so this will be the next stage. So once they've got obviously approvals from us, they'll be seeking external funding, and at this stage they haven't asked council for any funding towards this.
Any other questions? Do I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Simpson, seconded Councillor Taylor. Would you like to speak, Councillor Simpson?
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair. I think the current facilities have been a significant advantage to our city, attracting national sports events. And I think for the City Rovers to be able to enhance those facilities will draw additional events, hopefully, to our city of a higher calibre. And I understand that some of the changes are to do with new rules and regulations around changing rooms and that sort of carry on. But any improvement on our grounds will be an improvement on the assets that we offer to the broader community. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just to add to Councillor Simpson.
Can you get your mic just a little bit closer? Sorry.
That better?
Sit up straight.
Hold on.
Well, I'll know when you talk.
With the increase in female participation in football, it's a necessary addition, so good on them.
Does anyone else have any comments? No? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 2, non-water capital program update. You're away.
Kia ora everyone, my name's Josh. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on progress of the capital program for non-waters assets. The reason we separated that out is because this committee and council have already received some additional reporting on the waters program, which is well understood and moving forward at pace. So the intent of this report is to become an ongoing report moving forward, covering basically the rest of the program. There are a couple of exceptions though. We've pulled out a couple of very large strategically important projects such as Tiaka, civic building upgrade, library upgrade, and the Parklands land development, because those big strategic projects are kind of being managed and reported on accordingly. But this covers the rest of it, which is still a fairly sizable chunk of the capital program for the next 10 years, but we've taken a focus on the first couple of years. I'll talk through the bulk of the report, then be happy to take questions at the end through the chair. We're fortunate in this report to have recently completed some budget rephasing or reforecasting as part of the annual plan exercise, so we can now compare actual expenditure against new, really current budgets. We can see that we're largely on track, running at $21.7 million actual expenditure to date on the program against a budget of 22.6 million, so just behind, but ahead of where we've been in previous years at the same time. The chart on, I believe it will be page 15 for you, shows that transport is leading the charge there. They're significantly ahead on their capital program year to date, where the other activities are just slightly behind on theirs, but working through the detail with the project managers. Most of that is just project phasing, with most of those projects still having pretty high confidence of completion this year or in the years they were intended. Major projects, or the projects with the largest expenditure, are tabled there on project 15 as well. All of those projects with significant spend are clearly in the construction or execute phases right now. Most are nearing completion, and there hasn't been any significant challenges. Well, there may have been challenges, but there's not significant issues with those major projects as at this time, which is really good. The chart on page 16 shows the status or the phase that each of the projects in the program are sitting in. And what we can see there are the projects that are not started or in a planning phase, as well as those that are in design, execute, or closed out. It's pleasing to see from when I looked at this data a month ago, a significant portion of the program is now in a design or execute phase. So those are the phases of the project life cycle where the meaty stuff's really happening. Design moves into execute, which is construction. So we've got the bulk of the program sitting in there. I will note on that chart on the right-hand side, there is a good portion of projects that are labelled as blank. That reflects the ongoing improvement work that we have in the organisation right now around project management, maturity and discipline. This is new reporting, new information, and there's a number of projects that at the time of reporting we weren't able to get a good, accurate project phase. It's likely that a number of those will be in the early phases, but the intent is to get that amount of blank projects well down for the next report. Key projects that have been listed as strategically important or of high community interest or council interest are tabled there on pages 16 and 17. The majority of those are on track. Emerson Street upgrades, roading project is being managed carefully, just as there are some challenges in the planning phase of that one, but the rest are very pleasingly on track. Below that table, we provide an update on the projects that have significant community engagement underway at the moment, and we talk to that. And finally, we talk about a bit of the improvement work that's going on in the organisation right now. Again, this is the first iteration of this report. There's a lot of work happening across multiple teams at the moment to kind of firm up the project management and program management discipline. The majority of that work is being coordinated through the EPMO, which is really good. And we've got some governance structures in place to manage and coordinate that work and make sure it is all aligned. Otherwise, I'll take the report as read and be happy to answer questions through the chair. Thank you.
Councillor Bode.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about the Mariwa Shops project. Is that what was shown to us? I think it's on page 17. Is that what was planned a couple of years ago and then put on hold? And is it going to get consulted on again, or it's a while since we've actually had a look at that.
I could answer that for you, Councillor Bogue, yes. That is correct. That is the project that was put on hold, and the transportation team are looking to reinvigorate that project again. Yep.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, I'm looking at page 17, open spaces, Dolbell Reserve new toilet. I see some earthy works going on in the reserve down there, but I don't see any development of the playground. So is the toilet block part of that playground development, or where's the toilet going? Halfway up the hill? Or at the bottom?
I'd have to get back to you on that. Tanya's not still here, is she?
No.
No.
Down the road.
Yeah, sorry, I should have probably caveated my happy to take questions, but with anything detailed about specific projects, I'll typically have to refer to one of the project owners, so I can come back to you on any of those, but ask anyway and I'll write them down.
I can clarify that and email that round to the...
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Napier Brook.
Thank you very much, Josh, for the report.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification, Mr. Chair. Just a question. I think this is a fantastic report, and I know this is sort of the first step at doing it, and so I appreciate all the work, and always love a traffic light system as well on status. That's great. My question is just around one of the things I think we've been keen to get oversight is, and I see you've got on track, managing, complete as sort of your status records at the moment. I'm really keen to get visibility over completed on budget versus completed with variations, or and then indication of whether or not we're sort of being able to manage things. I'm trying to get a sense of those capital projects, whether they're being managed inside the original scope or if things are needing rescoping and therefore additional budget, and we've got some oversight of that sort of, if there's inefficiency in the system there. So I just wonder if you could take away some thought on how we could possibly communicate that. It feels like the right place to do it.
So would you say like the Emerson Street upgrade, the comment on that, is that the sort of thing you're after?
Yeah, I think that comment was good. So, for instance, the Veronica Sun Bay, it says complete, and it's got our budget in there. Was it completed on budget? Was it completed under budget? Did we require variations to it? That sort of level of detail.
No, that's good feedback. As we said, this is a new paper, which we'll grow on, so feedback's really good.
Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Josh. Some of us have been asking for this style of reporting some time. Our non-waterworks capital expenditure has been a bit of a gap and a ghost in the past, so it's great to see this, but it does raise for me some questions, particularly on page 16, where we look at the design and delivery, particularly the difference between activity this financial year and activity next financial year. And my question is, how are we going to absorb the capacity need for the anticipated delivery expectation? There's a lot more work sitting in the design phase next year than in the current year, and do we have the capacity to actually manage that workflow?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's a point well made. This reporting and the teams, producing this internally gives the teams visibility of, capacity needs coming up as well. So we're very much using this to forecast demand on the teams internally, project managers, designers, as well as the construction market. So you're right, there is a bow wave of work coming. And yeah, this helps us best prepare for it. So right now, the market externally is hungry. So actually, pushing some of the work through is going to be beneficial. But I think you've flagged a good point. It's internal capacity around design and project management where the challenge will be. So we're managing.
Just a further question to that, Mr. Chair, is the other concern is what's sitting in blank. That probably makes up 25 or 20% of our current non-waterworks capital expenditure. And it's just a little bit disconcerting that we don't know where it sits in the program, and particularly the amount that we don't know that's going to arrive in future years. Don't worry about answering that question. It's more a point, but it is a case of, this is why we've been wanting the style of reporting to give more transparency over that. And if I may, Mr. Chair, in answer to Deputy Mayor's question, it's answered further into the report. The disconnect is currently the fact that our cycle project management system doesn't talk to our financial system, and that's one of the significant areas of improvement that they've signalled, and I think that's really good.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So you really bring to attention a risk, are you?
Well, there is a risk there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what, okay.
Thank you.
Noted.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I've got a question and a feedback, if that's all right.
It's question time, yeah.
Feedback and report, like you asked for. You might have to come back to us, but the municipal theatre, do you happen to know when that one's due to be completed? It's very exciting to see it happening, and I saw that we had a bit of a soft launch based on the toilets.
Yeah, unless Russell's looking at someone.
Yeah, Jamie, do you have any information on that, or not quite? Not at this point. Okay. Just for the audience, no detail at the moment, so we'll find out more information and send it round, yeah.
And then just on the report, I think this is fantastic. Just thinking, because it's a publicly facing report, it would be really neat to link it to our priorities. So how have these projects made us a more financially stable council? How have we improved our places and spaces? How have we made Napier more resilient? Just so that we can see the work towards our goals.
Thank you. Any other
Noted.
questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a mover for this paper, please? Councillor Crown, seconded by Councillor Simpson. You're reserved. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair, I just congratulate the staff for being able to pull this information together for us. It gives us good visibility over some of our previously untransparent activities, and it also gives us that visibility going forward as to some of our risks around how we're going to implement some of this work. And I just think the staff have done a really good job, and I thank them, and I look forward to future reports.
Thank you. Councillor Grigg.
Yes, through you, Mr Chair. Just to say thank you to the Transportation Department for the good communication between residents and council. There's been digital signboards, there's been letters delivered, and it's been awesome communication, so just a big thank you.
Pass it on.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr Chair. I really concur with the comments from Councillor Simpson. I think it's an excellent start, and it's allowing us to sort of pick out the gaps that still are there from an information perspective coming through to us, but also building confidence for us as well and providing good oversight so that when we're approached by members of the public, we're armed with a bit more information about some of these projects. And there's a particular line in the report that I think is really important, and it acknowledges that the value monetary of a project may be out of sync with the value to the community of a project. And if I may, Mr Chair, I'd just like to draw attention to one particular project that's mentioned in the table underneath that statement. It's in regards to the safety improvements along Wellesley Road and Sale Street, Latham Street. There was an accident there yesterday, another accident, which I heard from a number of residents about via text last night. They are so excited that we were able to respond to their consistent calls for some action around traffic calming and the use of a roundabout. And I want to acknowledge the work of our team, our transport team, who were able to do that piece of work, phase the project in their budget, and deliver something that is of such high value and that has been called for by that part of our community for so long. Alongside of that, there were issues with development, which we love to see, but parking issues that were attached to that. Our regulatory team were able to respond. So I just think when you package everything up, the impact and the benefit to community, and us being able to know and see it come through these kinds of channels as well, it's just great work all round, and I just really want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge the work also of Laura Jeffers. She rallied her community. She got about 40 to 50 signatures of residents along Wellesley Road to make us aware of these things. And it's just been a really great collaborative approach to finding a solution. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Crown. It's always good to hear a good story with a good ending. So that's great. So I've got 3 positives. Is anyone speaking against it? So all of those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Well done. We're on to Nsika. There he comes.
Yep.
On to Three Waters Capital Program delivery. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Said, and with me is Hansika, and we will present the Three Waters Capital Program. Most of the information we have tried to cover in the one-page dashboard, so I'll quickly go through that. So Three Waters have an annual budget of 23.9 million for this financial year, and out of which we have spent 54%, which is 12.8. And there's a short graph with a forecast in the bottom left corner, which is showing that we are looking at hitting our target of 24 million plus minus 5% this year. So it's really good to see that we are on track to spend all the money. What are our key projects where we'll spend the money in the next few months? Mission Hills booster and pipeline, Latham Street flume replacement. I can go in more details about this project if you have any questions. And the rising and falling mains from our bore fields to the new reservoirs is going into detailed design stage. Some quick wins in the last 6 weeks. We have awarded the Mataroho and Taradale rising and falling mains contract for detailed design. We are about to award the flume replacement, which is basically wastewater pipe work upstream of our Latham Street pump station. The procurement strategy for our wastewater outfall, there's a paper happening later today, so I'll leave it for them to answer. The program horizon, that's probably where we'll cover a few good projects, mainly in the water supply scheme. So in this financial year, we have seen a good spend in wastewater, and we are expecting water supply to be the next big spender next year, mainly because of the 4 or 5 large projects which are mostly in design at the moment. We also have Taradale and Herrick culverts progressing through design, which hopefully we'll have a paper for you next month, where we'll present details on that project as well. At the bottom, we have shown a couple of photos. Purimu Channel Gate has been installed a couple of weeks ago. The middle picture is the storage cell 3 at our wastewater treatment plant, which is under construction. And on the right, we have the Lighthouse Road Stormwater Improvement Project, which has been completed as well. Overall, a very busy year so far, and hopefully we'll continue the progress in the next few months as well. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, you used the term, we're spending all our money, but are we delivering all the projects with that money?
Yes, through the chair, really good question. So in the last couple of years, we were mainly in the design stages for a lot of key projects, and now we are seeing actually things being built. So I would say yes, there's actually a lot of things actually being constructed, which will help improve our Three Waters network.
And just to clarify why I asked that, because I just, in the news this week, we've had, is it Wellington Water?
Yep.
Have been paying 3 times as much for projects to be delivered than they perhaps should have. And I'm just making sure that we're not falling into that trap of it being about how much money we spend, but actually what we deliver.
No, through the chair, exactly. Spending the money is probably not the only metric we should be showing, but highlighting those key successes and quick wins is probably a good point as well.
Acting Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report. I had a couple of questions. One was on the page where we talk about Three Waters project updates, some on hold and some not started. It might be my not understanding of like the titles that we give projects, but I was looking through that list to see if there were any specific projects related to either our 2020 flooding event primarily that were either on hold or not started. Are you able to tell me if any of those are related to those stormwater works in those communities?
Through the chair, unlikely they're linked to the 2020 flooding. So most of the projects which are on the list or on hold are mainly developer driven. So it's where we are waiting for them to start the projects, and those are the ones which are mainly on hold.
Fantastic. So just clarifying, there are no projects related to our 2020 flooding event that have been put on hold or not started yet?
I will double check and confirm to you.
Thank you. That would be really helpful. My second question, and I'm not quite sure which part of the report it's best to ask it in, but I had seen and sort of been asked to raise a question around reducing water pressure across the city, and I wonder if you're in a position to advise us if that is a theme that you're seeing or what is happening in the water pressure space for potable water?
So through the chair, we monitor our water pressure. So Three Waters haven't noticed any significant change in the water pressure, so our water pressure is pretty stable. It's very likely if people are moving houses, they might notice a change in pressure. So our pressure is mainly driven by the reservoirs, and it flows by gravity. So we keep our reservoirs always, we try to keep them full. So it's unlikely that, especially with the amount of rain we have, that our reservoirs will drop levels. So we maintain them pretty high, and our monitoring hasn't shown any changes, significant changes to the pressure. So I don't see, I can double check, but we haven't seen any changes in the pressure in our water network.
Sorry, just on that, just to add to that answer, I don't believe we've had any projects that would create any pressure changes. We've not had projects that would that the pressure change is an outcome of that project. That's what I'm suggesting. Though there are times, I guess, when we might have some water breaks that might have some localised water pressure drops, but that would be rectified once the team had repaired those, and that would be back to normal water pressure. But
Thank you. So just through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't seen a number of complaints come through around dropping water pressure in the city?
As far as I can recall, we haven't received any service requests or complaints for pressure loss or pressure drop.
there's been no significant number of complaints that would raise a concern for the team.
So what does, through you, Mr. Chair, what does happen when a complaint is raised, and what would you suggest to people that are seeing a reduction in water pressure?
Yeah, absolutely. So when somebody does raise a concern with their pressure reduction, the team will go and test. Usually they'll test the pressure at the house, but also in the street, to try and determine where that change in pressure might be, whether it's private plumbing or it's a network issue. And Syed mentioned that we do monitor at key locations around the city for looking for those citywide fluctuations and try and capture those events prior to that being a citywide problem. So, but if you are experiencing, you're noticing pressure fluctuations or a reduction in pressure at your house, do ring through to customer service, and we'll get the water team out there to investigate and try and assess where that problem might be coming from. Yeah.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
Just through the chair, one of the projects there's been quite a bit of noise in our community about is the Mataruahau Reservoir. Yep. And I see it on here, and you've got that something about seismic standards and
yep.
things. So has that project is it on track? Is it delayed? What is happening with it?
So through the chair, so the reservoir design is progressing. End of April, we will finish the concept design for the reservoir, where we'll then make a call on the next stage for the reservoir. So the bores, the pipelines, the reservoirs are all progressing.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just on that project, can you remind me what the governance structure is for that project? Just, I suppose it's kind of more directed at Mr. Bond. We had discussions early on around it having a governance structure that included elected members on it, but I don't think that's come to fruition.
That is correct. I'd have to go back and find, there was a conversation. I'd have to look at that report. I'm not too sure if that, if you know of the governance structure in terms of the reporting side off the top of your head, or we...
No, sorry.
No.
We'll come back to you on that.
I think, we will have to revisit that and come back. And I think it might be timely too to bring maybe an update on that project to the committee and refresh ourselves of what's happening there, I think.
Can we put that down as an action point, please? And then that'll cover everything.
We can present it once we finish the concept design in April. We can bring it here and present the design.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Question about the chart on page 20, allocation of money across the three waters, water supply, stormwater and wastewater. Just a question, how do you arrive at the allocation between those? Is there some formula? Because I'm aware that stormwater is a big issue for the city. How do you split that money up?
So through the chair, so it's done to the LTP, but it's mainly projects driven rather than linked to each other. So we do we do water, snow, water, wastewater separately based on the project needs.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Crystal.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to support this report. The new graphics, the dashboard, starts to demonstrate in real pictorial terms what we're delivering as an organisation. And congratulations to the staff, because I anticipate that a lot of this at the moment is manually inputted rather than electronically generated, which I think over time may be resolved. But I think it does also have a spattering of detail around some of the significant pieces of work, but enough strategic information for us to have confidence, and I wish you well in spending the rest of the budget before the end of the financial year.
Thank you.
Councillor Crystal.
Yes, it's a really good report, thank you, and I found it good to read. And this is a huge part of our resilience for our city. And I know this is really important to our community. When you ask them about what's most important, water always comes up. And, you know, it's unfortunate that most of them don't bother to read any of this information to see what projects are happening and to see how much we are doing and spending to try and make ourselves as resilient so we don't have water coming up in our streets like some other cities in New Zealand. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? I'd just like to say too, well done for the report. It's our last two papers that we're sitting close to budget, which is great. And I'm sure you'll keep the good work up and we'll have a good result at the end of the year. So anyway, all those in favour of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, IAF Mariah Nui to Te Awa Stormwater. Andrew. Welcome to you all, three of you, and away you go.
Yes, thank you. Andrew Lebiota, Manager Water Reforms Transition here at Napier City Council. I'm accompanied today by Rachel Hayden of National Aquarium and Joel Wolcott. So the report today is to seek funding towards a skink habitat enclosure to be directed from the IAF Marae Nui to Te Awa Stormwater Project to essentially the skink squad, so it can help enable them build this enclosure. We do have a bit of a presentation for you as well to give some history and further information about the skinks. I will take the report as read. Really, the purpose of this funding and the enclosure from the stormwater project's perspective is to mitigate risk to our resource consent and notice of requirement. We're anticipating that having a lizard management plan in place is going to be a requirement of the resource consent. Now, part of that plan generally includes having a habitat to rehome any found skinks to. So allowing for this enclosure to be constructed is actually an enabler for the stormwater project to proceed as well. So thankfully, and I think it was beneficial, we found out about the skinks early on during some ground investigations we were doing for the outfall discharge pods. Mike Alibardi from our Parks Department raised the awareness to us, which prompted a meeting quite quickly between National Aquarium and the Stormwater Project, and it really got things kicking off. In the presentation, I'll show kind of an example of when it can go wrong, an example of when things like this actually go right. So maybe without further ado, I'll kick into the presentation. It's going to be mainly led by Rach and Joe. And unfortunately, I don't think my screen is, there we go. Bear with me. I should have brought
That one.
Yeah, go for it.
Tēnā koutou. This is a northern spotted skink, and we are really lucky to share our taio and our homes with these little guys. Estimates from a population study done in 2021 showed that the range of these guys is estimated to be 10 to 100 individuals living on our local marine parade. They are a species that's considered at risk relict in the Department of Conservation threat classification system. They're also noted as conservation dependent, in partial decline and sparse. So the challenge for for this species, which I'll show you in a couple of slides, is actually the distribution of them is not just in Hawke's Bay. We have a little slither here, but then it's the bottom of the North Island and the top of the South Island. So it's presented somewhat of a challenge because it's not a national Department of Conservation target species for investment in conservation work because of its distribution, but we have a genetically distinct population here. So it has modest strongholds on predator-free islands and what have you as well, but we have this little strip of population here. Next slide. And you'll see already in the project work that we've got, they're quite, they're an endearing species. And so we're quite blown away already by some of the schools and community engagement we have wanting to support the work that we're doing. Next slide. And so this slide shows you that distribution. You'll note our little orange slice up there, Napier Hastings, along that Marine Parade foreshore area. And we have a Hawke's Bay and Marlborough Sounds distinct coloration. So you can sort of see where that genetic subpopulation comes into play around the Hawke's Bay area and why our little guys are so important. Next slide. So this was a bit of a passion project initially when it started between ourselves, colleagues in Napier City Council, Mike Alabadi being one of them, Ngāti Pāro Trust, so Chad Tariha is chair of the Ngāti Pāro Hapu Trust, was involved in terms of mana whenua engagement in addition to Mana Ahuriri Trust, Biodiversity Hawke's Bay, who is a real facilitator of a lot of conservation action in Hawke's Bay, and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. And at our early stages, we also had experts at Auckland Zoo, the New Zealand Herpetological Society, and Hastings District Council as well. Next slide. So the timeline post the population study that was done in 2021 for that area, 30 kilometres of coastline between Whirinaki and Clifton. Post that, when we realised some work needed to be done, but there wasn't a huge amount of money to do it, Hawke's Bay Regional Council is one of our partners. We set up a web page to encourage public sightings of the species, but this was also actually to build understanding of the species in the area. And part of that in 2023 extended to engagement of Te Awa residential properties that abutted the known habitat, so that we could actually figure out if people were seeing these skinks, if cats by chance were bringing them home with them, and how much of a risk, because we note that one of the big threats to these species are predators. So it is rats, mice, stoats, feral cats, etc. And then we secured some biodiversity Hawke's Bay contestable funding to help us budget for and build our sanctuary as well. So in 2024, you'll see it's taken time. This is a passion project. The design was finalised. We've had a lot of donated time in terms of quantity surveying and design work with structural engineers. to get our plan in place, and then we commenced our schools and community engagement as well, with increasing numbers of schools actually being really excited about how they can help fundraise for this project as well. And plans into this year, it's just progression of the various Department of Conservation permits we need for different activities, the lizard management plan, and then getting into construction, which is part of the reason that we're seeking the funding today.
And yeah, just two news stories that I was able to come across. So Porirua City was upgrading a sewage storage tank to mitigate wet weather overflows. They were unaware of skink habitat was in the locality of where the reservoir was to be built. This caused about a 6-month delay. Contractors had already established. They had to cease physical works while they were actually charging council. They say it contributed to a $12 million cost increase. Now, to say that that was directly caused just by the skinks might be a bit of an overstatement. However, the headline does say native skinks cause cost blowout. So that's a bit of a story of when things go wrong and you don't take the proper ecological assessments into account when you do large-scale projects like this. The next one looks at in the Bay of Plenty, sorry, the name of the highway escapes me at the moment, but all their planning work did the right things. Ecological assessment, the lizard management plan was in place. They had an enclosure for it to go to before it was rehomed to a full 230-hectare sanctuary. But obviously, in my opinion, the news headline reads a lot more positively to the steps that council and the contractor took to protect the species that was at risk. So that was just a quick little, I guess, presentation of the skinks tying into our project. Again, the main, I think, benefits here outside of creating the protected zone for the skinks is the risk mitigation to the stormwater project. As you're aware, when I've spoken to IAF before, this is strongly a social housing outcome-driven stormwater project. It's co-funded by Kainga Ora. We've got the housing agreement that we've signed up for. We're going to be delivering 400 additional social houses. This is the kind of project that I say enables those spaces and places for all, even going beyond people, enabling spaces for protected species to exist. But happy to take any questions.
So I have one for a start. There's no excess budget required. There's the 100,000 is in the project that you're doing?
Yes, through the chair. We're anticipating that we should be able to reallocate that 100,000 without any additional budget required. Through the now finished concept design, engineers' estimates have actually come in slightly under what they originally were at through optioneering. We are going to have that quantity surveyed and tested again, but as it stands to date, that 100,000 should be able to fall within the current allocated budget.
And a second question is the final product that'll be put there will come back to council? So you've got draft plans here.
Yep.
The final plan will come back to council before it, with the final budget will
Through the
come
chair,
back
I'll
to council?
put that to the skink team.
I'm not sure that we had intended to through the chair, but we certainly can if required. The original size of the sanctuary was 100 metres squared, and we had that quantity surveyed, full design plans done. However, we need to reduce it. It's currently in the process of getting the design plans reduced to 75 metres squared to avoid having to go through a resource consent process. So we can certainly present back to the...
Okay, we'll see how we go.
Yep.
Yes, Greg.
Yes, through the chair. Just two questions. The first one is, what are the estimated ongoing operational costs of the sanctuary?
Through the chair, Councillor Grigg, quite minimal. We sort of acknowledge that at some point we would like to hand over ownership of the project to a community group. There's a couple that have expressed interest. we would still have a point of contact in the animal team at the aquarium that made sure that certain tasks were being done, in addition to any monitoring of populations and what have you, that we needed to ensure we were monitoring population growth, predator presence, all of that sort of thing. And it would be ongoing fundraising to support any renewals required. It's quite a simple structure. It just has to be predator-free. So renewals would probably initially be around some of those elements.
Okay, and just second question. Just looking at the drawings, can you explain how the floor and the roof work? Because are the skinks actually on the beach or are they on a floor?
Through the chair, yes. So if you can imagine, it's essentially PVC walls that have to be down a certain depth into the ground with concrete footings, and it is just their normal substrate. So it is just the gravel beach. The whole thing has been designed to not be a permanent structure, so it literally could be moved to another location if we wish. Or, all going well, you don't need the structure in future because the population is doing so well. The roof itself, so you can imagine it's steel framing structure, and then there is like a 10 mil by 10 mil stainless steel mesh that is so to let sunlight, rain, everything else that they would normally get. And we just have some very creative upside down gutters, for a lack of a better explanation, to prevent mice getting in.
Councillor McGrath. Then Councillor.
A few questions for this. So what was the roof structure? The mesh? Okay. So once they're in, and that's it? Okay. Yeah. But just a few more questions. You said that there could be 10 to 100 skinks along Marine Parade. Now, are we talking all the way to where? The Naroro River outlet, or?
Through the chair, it was between Whirinaki and Clifton, that initial 30-kilometre tested space. What we want to do shortly is actually redo some baseline monitoring to try and get some more accurate statistics on the number of northern spotted skinks that are there. There are common grass skinks and other species that are not at the same risk that the northern spotted skinks are. But yes, that methodology in 2021, that's how much at risk they are. That's the estimated population.
And was this a project started before we were looking to put stormwater through there?
Yes.
Yeah. So because I'm just looking, if we're looking to spend $100,000 of community money for up to 100 skinks, that could be within, almost 30 k's probably if you do the coastline or whatever it is. You know, to me, this is a water project that may have some issues where you're going to put the pipeline through. If we're looking to spend $100,000 for something that may or may not actually be there. So is the project today about delivering a water project or delivering a Protect the Skinks project?
Yeah, through the chair, this is a stormwater alleviation project to enable community housing. The issue, though, is through the resource consent process, this could be conditioned on that. It just so happens that it coincides that the proposed outfall location is where a habitat has already been created for this species through the works of the community groups, Department of Conservation. It has brought to light maybe a deficiency in GIS layering, that this habitat zone was not located there or wasn't available to asset planners at the time to perhaps look at alternative designs to avoid the habitat. So that's another action we're taking out of this, is creating biodiversity layers within GIS, habitat layers to prevent situations so you can pre-plan, I guess, more strongly. But we're trying to react to this as best as we can, given the circumstances.
And I get that. If it's a water project and we're looking to get consents, for me, the first thing we would do is go down there and see if there's an actual issue in the area that we're looking to work, not between Clifton and wherever, because it's kind of irrelevant to the water project. It's only relevant to the area you're going to be working in. And I think back a little bit to not so long ago, the roundabout done at the end of Awatoto Road, and they set up quite a big camp on the beach with all their diggers and trucks and bits and pieces. And I'm just wondering how they got on, because that's within that same skink zone that you mentioned. how did they get on with their skink reporting and various things? And is it an opportunity for us to go and have a look at what they did there? Because I haven't seen any buildings they've put up for skinks. So perhaps copy them rather than sort of leap straight into a $100,000 project. And not so many questions in that one.
Through the chair, though, that's a recommendation we'll take. We can have discussions with the roading team and NZTA to see what was done for establishment there.
Yeah. Secondly, were there any other options put forward other than a big plastic box sort of a deal, something more natural like a predator fence with rocks and cover in it?
Through the chair, yes, about 7 different options were considered, including doing nothing. The PVC structure is something recommended by herpetological experts as predator-proof, mice can't climb it, resistant to UV, resistant to the environment. Metal structures, obviously, you have to be quite careful with salt corrosion, things like that. We talked about habitat, with the plantings of different species down there, habitat enrichment, things like that. But the core of the issue is the number of challenges they face, including human activity, motorbikes, vehicles on beach, predators. So there's so many threats that they face that a structure was deemed as the most appropriate option.
Is there anything that would stop kids climbing over the top of this thing?
Through the chair. No, there's not, but we discussed the risk of vandalism, anything else. Signage would be key to, the project, because it's about, I think, 1.2 metres high, getting to 1.8 metres at the apex of the structure where the roof would be. So in theory, someone could sit on the side of it, but we'd be aiming to build so much community support that it was sort of known what it was there for. Signage also supported it, QR codes to video links of what the skinks are, etc., to build a bit more support for it so people knew not to do that.
Yeah, that works well in our community. One more question. Doctorals along the beach line. Do we have to have a plan to protect them as well? If we're going to be putting pipelines through, is that as relevant as what we're looking to do for the skinks?
This is actually nothing to do with this report, I wouldn't have thought.
Well, if it's about getting resource consent to protect the natural animals down there, have we missed something?
Through the chair, there is work being conducted on our ecological assessment. There has been risk associated with the nesting of them, but it's not to the same extent of it being a habitat zone. I don't have the specifics at me, but from our understanding ecologically at the moment, the risk to the dotterels is not as significant as it is to the endangerment to the habitat of this skink population.
Thank you.
That's grand.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, obviously with all projects, there would be a certain budget allocation, I would say, for risk mitigation. Is this sort of expenditure within that usual band percentage-wise? I note we've got $22.5 million allocated to the stormwater project. My math says this is like 0.04% of that entire budget. Is that normal for risk mitigation?
Through the chair, risk mitigation, I don't know if it would be a separate line item, you'd have contingency, and certainly we did have budget allocated to our resource consent portion. That budget has probably exceeded, because a greater issue with this project was there was a designation that existed, which lapsed, I believe, in 2022, and we did not renew that designation. So now that we're going through the same process of notice of requirement to redesignate land. I can't speak to the history of that. So this could be seen that would fall under your budget of resource consent granting.
Thank you. And just supplementary as well, refresh my memory. I think over $12 million of the budget came from central government funding, is that right?
Yes, through the chair, 12.4 million is committed by Kāinga Ora through the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund agreement.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, through you, Mr Chair. With the comms and the signage and that, this is a native species, and I see it's got a Māori name. Mokomoko is the species, and Kokowai is the northern spotted skink. So will that be included in the signage? And the other thing I wanted to say is that when people are aware of the skink, because a lot of us, I mean, I didn't even know they were there or existed, it might perhaps be another incentive for people not to light fires along the beach if they think they're going to be harming some of these precious little native creatures.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. Te Ao Māori is key to some of the content that we want to be sharing. And Chad Tariha, through his role as trust chairperson of the Ngāti Parahapu Trust and Paris Greening from Mana Ahuriri Trust, are very keen to see what stories we can tell. Schools engagement as well around some of the content that we create will be key. And you touched on knowledge of the skinks, which is absolutely a key outcome. We're very keen to, often feedback we get at the aquarium is that, you know, through programs there's nothing living on the beach. We're actually currently doing a baseline biodiversity study at the moment to gauge public understanding of biodiversity on Marine Parade, because they don't necessarily know that a lot of species live in that area, so that's a key outcome for us. So engage minds, then engage hearts, build support for protecting our local taonga species.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Crystal.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you, just looking at the aerial shot of the location, it is relatively close to the pathway. There's, you know, I can see some advantages of the pathway going past the structure for exactly what Councillor Bogue's talking about, but the risk for cyclists as well, is there going to be sufficient space? We don't actually want cyclists hitting the structure.
Through the chair, absolutely right. The structure itself is actually off the grassy verge. That's an indicative area that was provided. So the structure itself will be solely on the gravel beach area abutting against that grass track, so definitely enough clearance to the cycle pathway.
Okay, thank you very much. Another tourist attraction.
Councillor Crystal,
Just
then Councillor.
Through the chair, have habitats like this been built before? Are we, so we know they work and stuff, are you using a proven model? Yeah.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. We have one of the senior team at Auckland Zoo, Richard Gibson, is involved as subject matter expert for a range of reptile protection programs across the country, and works very closely with DOC, who are, you know, advising us on what we're doing in this project as well. Otago skinks, there's all sorts of projects, and the PVC material specifically used for the walls is one of interest, because yes, we have a nice flat habitat here on Marine Parade, but if it really works, it can be used as a bit of a prototype for more remote areas where reptile conservation programs are being run, because you can literally scale it up cliff sides if you need to get to where some of these populations are. So it is best practice.
Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair. A couple of reasonably simple questions, really. There are actually skinks in that designated area?
Through the chair, yes. We have been down there and have seen them subsequently, so we can confirm they are there.
And were any of the photos in the presentation one of those skinks?
Through the chair, no. I have other photos that I can show you with their little red bellies on display and what have you, handled by an expert. But those ones, no, they were taken by the ecologists that we're hoping to engage in the baseline monitoring, Nick Harker, but not quite as great shots taken of them as those ones.
If you can indulge me, Mr Chair.
I'm sure if you want one, Rachel will be able to get you one.
Well, no, it was more a case of taking into account Councillor Bogue's suggestion about winning people's hearts, and I'm just proving that I've got a heart. If we can get a photo of one of our skinks, can we name it? There'll be a good competition to engage the community.
Through the chair, I would want to talk to the Ngāti Hapu Trust about naming conventions that we felt were appropriate. But yes, when we know how many individuals would live in there and who those individuals were, there is many opportunity for public engagement.
And further to Councillor Crone's point, Crowns, sorry. I'm overcoming a head cold. But the point made that government is funding part of this project. The funding that you're asking for has actually come from savings within the project. So you're not asking for any more money. So I think it's a great idea to move on and create an education platform, protect a skink that might be endangered or is extremely endangered, and provide a really good opportunity for another amusement on our marine parade.
Acting Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
That's wrong.
Acting Mayor Brosnan.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
I'd like to second it.
Okay, well, that's good. Would you like to speak?
Very briefly, I think it's been discussed at length. I think it's less of an attraction than perhaps Councillor Simpson and more of an ecological protection mechanism, and I applaud you for the work you have done to get to this point. I think this council has gone leaps and bounds over the last decade and how much it cares about its natural environment, and I was very pleased to see this paper, so congratulations. And I have full confidence that you will manage all of the complexities around everything that's been discussed around this table as you implement the project. So thank you very much.
Councillor Taylor.
No further comment is necessary.
Councillor Gregg was first, I think, by a fraction of a second.
Oh, yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to say thank you to Andrew, Rachel and Joe. The Skink Sanctuary sounds like a great project that already has enthusiastic support from schools, the community, the aquarium staff and DOC. And anything that goes towards protecting our native flora and fauna has to be of benefit to Napier.
So that's three who have spoken in favour. Do I have anyone speaking against it?
Yep.
Councillor McGrath.
Yes, I'm going to speak against the recommendation today. At the end of the day, we say it's only $100,000. It's come from the government. It's come from somewhere. It's just hidden in a big project. At the end of the day, that money's come from ratepayers or taxpayers. We're looking to build a sanctuary for something that we're not even sure there's many of in the area we want to put our pipes through. Or, I don't quite get it. It's a hunk of plastic up on the marine parade. Doesn't look very natural to me. I really, really struggle with it. Was it last year or the year before we showed so much importance for the animals along marine parade? We burnt thousands of fires. For Matariki, fires everywhere. And now all of it, the two don't quite line up for me. We either supported that or we supported this. We're supporting both. Don't quite get that one. And if we're looking, we've got this really good building, the aquarium, that has lots of animals and bits and pieces in. Have we considered putting them in there, if we find any? So, yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments? I'll put those in favour of the...
Do I get a right of reply?
Do you need it? Yes, certainly.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to reiterate that I think 0.04% of a project budget to save the only instance of this naturally occurring endangered species on our coastline as we are interrupting its habitat through a piece of work is money well spent and money the community would support the protection of. So you can, in my mind, acknowledge that fires are not good for habitat and provide habitat in the same breath quite consistently. So I appreciate all of the work that the staff have done to bring this to us. Thank you.
Thank you. So I put the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Against.
Against. Thank you, and well done under cross-examination. You did very well. All right, I'll now put a motion forward to exclude the public, please. Do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor, seconded Councillor Crown, and I'll now adjourn the meeting for acting mayor
Future Napier Committee.
Annie Brosnan to bring her committee meeting of future Napier.
2-minute toilet break and we'll ring.